everybody. Welcome to another edition of Elevating with Marcia and Mike. I'm your host, Marcia Hawkins, along with Mike Athos. And today we have a really cool topic to talk about. So, Mike, I'm going to let you run with that because
Yeah.
I don't even know what you're going to talk about.
Well, no, it's funny. So before we started recording today, we were talking about how many plates we have spinning and how much stuff is going on and trying to keep the main thing and really just focusing our time and energy on what works and what doesn't. And we offer you and I both offer some great services for businesses, whether it's payroll optimization and cost containment or website and marketing services or I mean, you name it. We offer great services to help businesses. But it's funny. So years ago, and you and I have talked about this. I started a seafood spice company called Aunt JoJo Spice, and it was in honor of my Aunt Joni that passed away from a very rare cancer. And I basically took our family seafood recipe and made it so that it could be mass produced and mass marketed. And but in part of doing that, I had to kind of deconstruct some other portions of that spice that our family had always used, so that it's just the raw spice material going into the product. Um, Long and short of it is, as I've been getting busier with especially the payroll optimization, the cost containment stuff with supplemental health insurance plans and Section 125 cafeteria plans. I don't need to bore you on that, but basically, we're saving companies a lot of money on their FICA tax contributions and their payroll, and we're providing some great benefits for the employees. But as I've been getting busier and busier with that, as well as my life insurance business and kind of all the different things that I've been doing, um, I really put Aunt JoJo Spice on back burner because you naturally, and I would think you'd agree with this, Marcia, you're going to run in the direction that's going to have the greatest return for your time with whatever you're doing. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
it's just you got to go with where you're going to have the biggest return on your investment. So I made a decision a couple months ago to kind of pull back the reins on doing my direct to consumer sales with Aunt JoJo Spice. I simply I've been making it under the Florida Cottage Act, which means that I can build it, I can produce it in my house. I'm not going to a commercial kitchen, and it means that I can go up to $250,000 of sales a year with it. If I cross that threshold, then I need to go into a commercial kitchen, and there's a lot more regulation with it. But I made a decision to kind of pull back my website and have it so that people can't go on and just purchase it from there. They kind of have to call in, and I'm doing it more on a one-on-one, case-by-case basis. And so last week was my daughter's spring break, and so I took one of the days off last week, and we actually ran the boat down. I live in Sarasota, but we ran the boat down to Boca Grande for the day, just to go. There's a awesome little island there called Cabbage Key. They have a restaurant there, and so they're serving fresh triple tail. It was awesome. But my phone was getting blown up as I'm sitting there driving the boat down to Cabbage Key, and that's about a 2.5 hour run to go down there. And I'm running the boat, so I'm preoccupied. But I mean, just like you, Marcia, when my phone rings, I want to answer it, and so and I want to
Absolutely.
get back to people. And so it was all these clients of a local seafood distributor that has been using my product and they will steam crabs with it, they'll steam shrimp with it, they'll also sell some of it as well. But because I was not keeping up with their inventory, this was a client that said, I have to have your crab spice. And so I'm thinking, okay, cool. This is great. Like I'm excited that someone wants to have my seafood spice. But at the same time, I'm like, it's not my return on my time investment there is not massive. It's very small. So what I was thinking was, yes, I can do more runs of it and make more crab spice, but in my conversation with the seafood distributor that because later on in the week I was talking with them and fulfilling their order, they were saying, what if we could partner? What if we could find a way to take the manufacturing side of it off of your hands, and maybe I just do the marketing side, which you and I are great at doing. And so all of a sudden I'm thinking, how do I utilize my time to the best of my ability, right? So if you follow me through this story, basically where I'm at with it is I was at the point that I was pulling back the reins, which is not what I'd recommend to anyone, but just because I was running out of time in the day, I was pulling back the reins on this business, and it's a viable business. I mean, there were people calling me, blowing my phone up because they wanted my product, and I was too busy with everything else. And yes, it's not a great example because I was running the boat on a weekday anyway. But let's move past that. But they want to have the products. And so all of a sudden I'm thinking, how do I best utilize my time and my energy? And I think a lot of it is if I can kind of subcontract or push the things off of my plate that other people can do very well. In this case, manufacturing Aunt Jojo Spice crab spice, and I'm sure I can sign an NDA and go through the secret recipe and all that with them, and I can very easily train them to go do it. Then I can spend my time focusing on the stuff that has a much greater impact, like the payroll optimization, the cost containment stuff, the website services, merchant services, that type of thing. So that was kind of that's been on my mind recently, is like, how do you maximize as a business owner? Because we're always talking about what do you do as a business owner? How do you maximize your time and use it the most efficiently? In this case, I think that I should be utilizing a third party to do the co-packing for me and to be building it
Oh,
out. And that way it's off my plate. And I know, Marcia, you run a bunch of different businesses. I mean, you're constantly spinning plates, and it's like, how do you focus your time on what the best place for you to focus in?
and
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's almost like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but um
typically, yes, but I don't like to run like that.
it's
I don't.
hard.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's self-defeating though too. So I'm assuming you're not going on Shark Tank.
I'm not going on Shark Tank. It's just it's I love the product. I think it's a great tribute to my aunt, but I don't see it blowing up to the point where I would need to go seek outside major investment to
I
move it
know,
to.
but I got to ask you though, because while you're telling the story, I'm going, oh my God, I got to ask him this. But I wanted you to finish.
Yeah,
But do you have a fear that you'll sell it and then it will blow up? You know, like people will say, oh my
yeah.
God, I sold that stock when it was 20 bucks and it went up to 20 million. Do you have a little bit of trepidation about that? I mean, do you think maybe you'd want to work some type of royalty in there down the road?
I definitely think I need to. I mean, I think that only makes sense, and maybe do it for a limited run or something. Maybe give them the distribution
Right.
rights for a certain location or something. I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah. Keep your hand in the cookie jar to some degree. And I say that only because I've used your spice, and I think you'd have to experience to understand just how special it is and how many uses there are for it. I mean, I was thinking, God, wouldn't it be cool in a Bloody Mary mix? I
Yeah.
love it in pasta. I
Yep.
love it with chicken. I like it with burgers. I mean, it's not just crab spice. There's so
No,
many
it's
things you
not.
can do with it. And I think the big thing is you almost have to experience it to understand how different it is. And I'm going to leave it at that. But yeah, well, let's get back to the time thing because I'm actually going through this with not my business, but with someone who is tied to my business. And I'll leave it at that. And I'm always fascinated by people that want to start a business, it's one thing to not have time management skills, and it's another thing to understand when you need to delegate
Yeah.
because the juice is not worth the squeeze with your
Yep.
time. And I think that's the latter is what we're talking about here. But I think for anybody listening, if they're even thinking about starting a business, if time management is not one of your specialties and you're not good at it, I would say sit it out. I don't think time management is something that you can acquire. I don't think it's something you can retrain yourself. It's either in there or it's not. Um, like even something as simple as cooking Thanksgiving Day dinner. Some people say to me, "How do you time it out?" Again, it's time management. It's knowing when to execute each part of that meal so it all comes out at the same time and it's hot and ready to serve. I mean, it sounds stupid and it's a bad example, but it is so true. There are people that are really good with time management. I mean, I'll give you an example. Do you know a few of your friends, family members, whatever, that you know if you're going to meet them for lunch or meet them or have a scheduled call or whatever, do you always know they're going to say, I'm running late. I'm running. Now,
Yeah.
I know I've run late with you before, but you know, if I say
It's if
5 minutes, I mean 5 minutes. And it's usually because I'm interrupted with a client that I have to take their call.
yeah.
But it is so true. If you cannot manage your time, sit self-employment out. It'll never work. And I see so many people try it and fail. I'm watching somebody implode right now that is trying to get their business off the ground, and it's I'm being honest, it's painful to watch because I
Yeah.
know what needs to be done, but you can't train somebody to do that. You just can't. And then I'm going to take it a step further. In the world that we live in now, I find that a lot of people are relying on certain things in their life to kind of get them through the day. And it's no dig to people that need these drugs, but there's a lot of people taking copious amounts of medications for anti-anxiety and depression and all of that. Not a good recipe. I mean, if you suffer from depression and anxiety, by all means, knock yourself out with it. I get it. I know this is probably controversial, but I feel compelled enough to talk about it because I see it over and over again. You've got to be mentally fit. You need to be financially fit. You need to be physically fit, and you also need to be emotionally fit. And lacking one of those, I do not feel that you have a high probability of a good outcome for that. And when I interview people and they say to me, I really want to start this business, this is what I want to do, and I hear things like, well, I've been working on my logo for 4 years, and I've been working on my website for 4 years, and I'm going to try to get to that, but I haven't been able to talk to this person about that, and I don't know about that. It's just like ding, 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 ding. Not a good idea. I highly recommend you stay with your job. It takes a certain kind of personality in person. On my worst day, I can get at my desk at 6 o'clock in the morning and do what I need to do, or 5 o'clock. Like, I am committed to that. I'm committed to that. I'm committed to running my day in an organized way. I'm committed to looking at my to-do list and knowing that I'm going to do it that day and I'm not going to put it off till tomorrow. And going back to what you're saying, that's what you did. You looked at your schedule and went, you know what? I've got to focus where I need to focus. This may not be the right time for this.
Yeah.
I love it. A hobby turned into a business, but it may not be the vessel you need to command as captain. Maybe someone else would be better, running that ship, and you it just being your concept.
I love the ability or the concept of being able to delegate it out because
Mhm.
it doesn't impact the result of it at the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
So if I can have another another hand in the pot that is 90% as good as what I'm doing, why would I not do that? And then that frees up my time to go do other things. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of what I'm juggling. But I think it's interesting because as a business owner, you always have to realize that your time is very definitive. Like you have so many hours in the day, and so how do you maximize that? And that's where I'm at with that company, and it's not a bad thing, but by any means. I mean, it's actually pretty exciting that the phone is ringing and people want to have more of it. But it's
But
like
how great it is that you recognize that, because
yeah,
a lot of people would say, okay, I got to ramp up this, I got to do this, and there, I think of people working on the assembly line, and it just keeps getting faster and faster, and they're trying to keep up, and they burn out, and then the joy and the fun is extracted out of that, and you're left with the grind. And what you do every day for 8 hours plus, you really need to enjoy it, and you need to streamline it in a fashion that not only works for you, it works for the client, it works for everybody. And so, I mean, good for you that you have that opportunity, but more importantly, that you recognized, because I honestly, I see so many people just trying to make it happen, trying to make it happen. On another note, I took my CSR out to lunch yesterday, and we were close to a Panera Bread. Which, when Panera Bread first came out, I thought it was just a really good, wholesome restaurant. Yeah, I know it's fast food, but it felt like the food was healthy, and it checked all my boxes, if you will. And we went in there yesterday, and I couldn't believe how dramatically different it was. And I said to my CSR, I said, it's kind of sad that businesses don't pay attention to the reason they first opened their doors, which is quality food. Like, have you been in a Panera Bread
Uh,
recently?
Recently, no, but I used to go when it probably first came out, which was a long time ago. But I
Yeah.
think that overall the my experience went downhill pretty quickly. Speaking to your point,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I remember walking in there. Now, mind you, I wouldn't buy this stuff, but they would have, baskets of bagels and fresh breads, and they had all these baked goods, and you walked in, and it immediately pulled you in, especially if you love that kind of food.
yeah,
And we went yesterday. It took half an hour for the food to come out, which I didn't have that kind of
that's
time there
crazy
yesterday.
for
Half an
what should
hour.
be a fast
People were
casual.
complaining. People were going up and complaining. They're like, "Yeah, we're backed up." And I'm looking around. It wasn't that busy. The place wasn't that clean. The food wasn't that good. And I thought to myself, I again, I know we've talked about this. I don't understand where people don't, especially a corporation like that. Sometimes the corporate office really is removed from each individual restaurant, that they don't see the day-to-day decline for, I don't get it. But mirroring that onto a smaller business where you own it, I'm always amazed that you go into a restaurant, and they they just don't put the energy into the food and the service anymore. And it's like, that's the only reason people are going in there.
Yeah.
They're not going in because you have a cool website. They're not going in because maybe because they're convenient. But when people, and maybe people go in because they've never been there before and it's convenient, I'll give them that. But that's not how you build a business. You build a business through people going in and leaving, going, you got to go there. So it applies to, I don't care what business you're running. The time management piece of that and the quality of what you're putting out. If you don't have those two as a part of your matrix for success, I again, I'd say sit it out.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah,
Don't do
I
it.
agree. I think it's
Yeah.
good advice. It's you got to time is very limited, so you got to use it
Mhm.
efficiently. So
Yeah, and if you find yourself, late for appointments and rescheduling and not really having the energy to do your day-to-day stuff, thinking that you can run a business because you're great at making bagels, is not a reason why you should quit your job and start a bagel business, because it doesn't. There is so much more that goes into that than just being able to make a good bagel. And I know that's a poor example, but I know you get what I'm saying.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, good. All right. So, are you going to update us on another podcast when your
I, I'm
JoJo
gonna
Spice is just being blown out of the water everywhere? And again, I hope you keep a slice of the pie there just in case.
yeah, I'm gonna keep you updated on it, but we'll see where it goes. But that's the direction I'm thinking because there's some much bigger fish to fry right now with the business services that we offer. So
Totally agree. All right,
yeah,
everybody. Thanks for tuning in for another edition of Elevating with Marcia and Mike. We'll be back next week with another podcast with informative business information for you.